At T-Mobile, our critical mission is providing unparalleled 5G coverage for when connectivity is mission critical. Introducing T-Priority, America's best 5G network experience for first responders, even in times of congestion. More capacity, faster speeds, better coverage. T-Priority from T-Mobile, built for tomorrow's emergencies, ready today. Discover more at t-priority.com.
For qualifying organizations on eligible rate plans, coverage not available in some areas and may be impacted by emergencies.
Are your ulcerative colitis symptoms proving difficult to manage? Tremfya guselkumab can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. At 1 year, many patients taking Tremfya achieved clinical remission, and some patients also achieved endoscopic remission. Individual results may vary. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Ask your doctor if Tremfya can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
This episode is brought to you by Prime Video. In the small town of Holland, Michigan, nothing is ever what it seems. Behind the tulip festivals and pretty houses lay dark secrets that threaten to tear a marriage apart. Nicole Kidman stars in this darkly twisted thriller about a wife and mother whose quest to uncover her husband's secrets may get her more than she bargained for. Holland, streaming on Prime Video, March 27th.
Welcome to another Find the Edge production for the Premier League Cricket Club. Connecting players and coaches, clubs and leagues, volunteers and supporters alike, you're in the right place for the best of the 33 ECB Premier Leagues and the 20 NCCA counties, bringing you the stories, the stats and the standout performances that make this game great. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to both our Premier League and NCCA shows so you don't miss any episodes. Now, shall we get stuck in? So, welcome everyone, and we're back with our head coach of the Premier League Cricket Club, Tom Scollay. We want to talk today with Scolls about a subject that, for anyone who's listened to this show, will know we're very passionate about, especially Mr. Newsom. Hugh, over to you, Western Australia.
Well, having lived in Western Australia for quite a bit and seen the glories of Western Australia, especially compared to the rest of Australia. I mean, why would you want to live anywhere else? It always amazes me how strong Western Australia is. I mean, historically, it's been strong. The Marsh family and Hussey and people like that, Damien Martin, although he's a bit of an NT boy as well, I think, isn't he? But at the moment, I think they were playing in the one-day match when our summer. I think it was the Scotland game. I think there was 6 or 7 West Australians, born and bred, playing in that Australia side, and it's that. How is it so strong at the moment? How is this? It's a massive state, but there's 2 million people in West Australia, and most of those are in Perth. Very few in Geraldton. God knows why. And how are they producing so many top class cricketers in what is essentially somewhere the size of? I mean, it's 2 Derbyshires, Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire, Lincolnshire. What's going on? I know the culture, the outdoor culture, the weather, lots of things. But Tom, so tell us, why does it work so well?
Oh, look, I don't have an exact answer, to be honest. And I live here. I'm in this system. They're in a golden period at the moment. They've won 8 of the last 9 titles. They won 3 Sheffield Shields in a row. They won 3 one-day cups in a row. And they've won 2 out of the last 3 Big Bash finals as well. And before that, they hadn't won a Sheffield Shield for 20 years. So it was a bit of a drought. And then going back to the late 90s, early 2000s, they did have a really great, very strong squad. But compared to the bigger states, Victoria, New South Wales, they certainly do punch above their weight. And 2 things that Australian cricket team or domestic teams are trying to do. One is win the title, and 2 is develop Australian cricketers. And often they don't go hand in hand. Often if you're developing Australian cricketers, you're losing them, and then you're losing your best players and you're not being so successful. But the amazing thing about what Western Australia have done in recent times is they're producing and developing all these great young players who are going on to play for Australia, but there just seems to be someone else to come in and do the job and be successful. And that's a that's got to be a testament to the whole organisation, not just now, but what's been happening for some time. So Adam Voges is a good friend of mine, a former teammate of mine. He's the head coach of the men's program, and he takes a lot of credit for the success they're having. He's been the head coach, but before him it was Justin Langer. Before him there were other guys that obviously set the foundation that Voges is now reaping the rewards from. And it's I think, like you said, Hugh, like the outdoor lifestyle, the active lifestyle must play a bit of a part where people grow up, they're outdoors a lot, they're getting fit, they're getting healthy, they're probably catching, and they're at the beach and doing these sort of things that any young kid hopefully can do to help progress them when they're younger. But look, I think they've got right now they've got a great sort of group of cricketers who are all around sort of 30 or 31 who have played a lot of cricket together. Guys like Cameron Bancroft, who has played a bit for Australia but not a heap. Sam Whiteman, hasn't played for Australia but has had a great domestic career. Ashton Turner, who's played a bit for Australia but not a heap. Hilton Cartwright, who played one test match but hasn't played much else for Australia. And then you throw in sort of Mitch Marsh, who's around a bit. You throw in some young guys, Cameron Green, who has had an amazing sort of young career. Aaron Hardy, Cooper Connolly's coming through. They've just got seems like a lot of depth. And so they've got a good culture. I think grade cricket's tough. A lot of the guys come back and play grade cricket. Yeah, Darcy Short is a regular grade player at the moment because he's not getting in the team. Cameron Bancroft plays a lot of grade cricket. And grade cricket is really valued. So it's one thing that I found interesting when I first went to England as a 20-year-old was that the pros never wanted to play club cricket. They were too big and too good for club cricket. It was very rare that they went back and played club cricket, whereas there's a real culture of you spend most of your time in club cricket before you become a pro, or all your time in club cricket before you become a pro. And a lot of your best mates are at club cricket still. So, excuse me, you sort of want to get back and play with your mates and have that fun and enjoy your cricket with a little bit less pressure than playing at the professional level. So I think a combination of things, but it's really hard to sort of pinpoint one thing.
So I'm going to pick up on what you've said there. And I think the outdoor lifestyle, that culture, I personally would discount that as part of the reason Western Australia is doing so well, because that's always been there. You know, that's something that's always been there. When you talk about generational, and for my sins, I can't believe I'm going to let this come out of my mouth. It feels a little bit like the class of '92 at Manchester United, where there was a generational number of footballers came through. You know, and United were exactly the same at the time. They'd won bugger all. I hope they never win bugger all, but that's a different matter altogether. But they'd won nothing for years. And then this class of '92 comes through, and that generational change there was something in there which happened to be linked to, I hate to say it, one of the greatest managers of all time at the same time, and the systems that are put in place. So if I look at what's going on in Western Australia, there's a very similar synergy there, isn't there? That generational and something in the background. So was there somebody or some people that changed the system at all in Western Australia, or is there a little bit of luck involved there?
Oh, look, I'm not sure there's luck. I think you need a bit of luck along the way in terms of timing, injuries. Yeah, timing, injuries, and those sort of things. But I think it starts from the top down. Christina Matthews was an excellent CEO. She was the only female CEO in Cricket Australia and in admin at the time. So she came in, and I think she's had the role for 12 or 13 years, and she was a big part of it. She was driving things from the top down, and then for quite a while now, they've had a really good guy, Hayde Harvey, as the director of the whole program, men's and women's, as he sort of does the contracting and the talent management sort of thing of the professional players. And then Voges came in, took over from Langer. Langer ran a pretty hard ship for a while, and I think that's why maybe he ended up sort of not being so successful with the Australian team in terms of them wanting to get rid of him, in terms of the way he managed people. But he was a polarising figure at Western Australia. I know a lot of guys loved him. I know a few guys didn't enjoy the way he went about things and how hard he was. In his first year or two, he ran them into the ground. I think there were quite a lot of soft tissue injuries because guys' workloads were through the roof, and he put a real emphasis on fitness. And a lot of the guys who, as I mentioned before, who are now 30 and the leaders in the team, they were young guys back then when Langer was in charge and really sort of teaching them what it takes to be a professional cricketer and how to be tough. And so I think JL definitely sort of changed the culture of Western Australian cricket. And then he moved on to the Australian team, and Vo just took over, and he is a much sort of softer, more relaxed guy, but also is able to tell someone to pull their head in and have a hard word if he needs to. And he's very well respected. And he'd come out of being the captain recently, so he played with a lot of them. But yeah, I think they're probably the four main people. Christina Matthews at the top, Kate Harvey, Justin Langer, and Voges, who have all had their own way of doing things and have had a huge impact on the whole culture and the way. And then it's the people, it's the leaders amongst the players. Sean Marsh was captain for a long time, and especially the last few years before he retired, he wasn't playing for Australia, so he was around WA. He was a very calm guy. He was a great leader. Didn't say a lot, but he was a great leader through his actions, and people loved and respected him. And then the other leaders, Ashton Turner and Sam Whiteman, they're both, again, fantastic guys. And again, they're all three Fremantle Cricket Club guys, all three pretty similar guys, pretty quiet. But when they talk, everyone listens. They're very well respected. They speak through their actions. They're tough as anything. And they're the sort of people that everyone wants to play for. So, yeah, look, I think there's 7 people I've mentioned. Cameron Bancroft's another leader who isn't a captain. Hilton Cartwright, Ashton Agar. There's so many guys who have been around that squad for a long time who have all made an impact.
And you mentioned the Fremantle link there. I mean, one of your students, Joel Curtis, he's obviously had a terrific season in grade cricket, and did he go 100, 100, 100? And then he's walked into the WA team and gone 100. And that doesn't happen in the UK, really. If somebody does make it out of Premier League cricket that maybe isn't already well entrenched in the pathway, they don't seem to be able to jump straight into that level. It seems that WA cricket, and I assume, first grade across the nation, same, you see it in Queensland as well, players like Josh Brown, it seems to prepare players really well for that next step up. It doesn't seem too big a gap. What's the reason for that compared to maybe Premier League, looking at it from both sides?
Yeah, look, I think you're right. But Joel's story is amazing. He got 100 in the preseason game at the Wacker against all the Wacker bowlers. That was off the records. It was just a practice game within Western Australia. Right. Then he got 300s in his first 3 grade games. In between that, he had a second 11 game for Western Australia, and he made like 22 and 0. So he did sort of fail in that game. Then he went and played for WA, and he got 1 in his first game for WA, and there were question marks about whether he'd be ready for the next level. And he only had 1 innings that game. And last year he played 1 Sheffield Shield game and he got a first ball duck. So he'd had 2 innings and he'd scored 1 run. And then he played against Victoria. Then he came back to Perth, and they were unsure whether they would pick him again, and he got another 100 for Perth. So they went with him again, and that was the 3rd Shield game he played. He got 30 odd in the first innings against Victoria, then 120 not out in the second innings. And then he's just kept going from strength to strength. He's then got a start in pretty much every innings of Shield cricket, the next 3 or 4 innings. And then on the weekend, he went 100 on Saturday, 100 on Sunday. But look, I think that there isn't a huge gap. There is a gap. And I spoke to Nathan McSweeney on my podcast recently about the gap from grade cricket to Shield cricket. And he said that in grade cricket, you can sort of, there's a good spell being bowled, but if you get through that, there's someone else coming on a few like overs later or whatever you can get through. If you can get to tea, you can cash in after teas. Like in Shield cricket, there's none of that. You've got to just face good bowling all the time. But grade cricket is tough because it's like here in Perth is all I can comment on because I haven't played grade cricket anywhere else, but they're sort of tricky-ish wickets a lot of the time, and you've got to fight hard for your runs. So when you get into and it's a tough cricket. People sort of have a bit to say and whatever. And so when you go up to Shield cricket, I think the bowling is usually a little bit better, but you're often batting on actually a bit better wickets as well. And people, I think, really don't talk about or understand how much the wicket really impacts a batter's performance. Like you look at Shield numbers over the last few years, and that the numbers have been pretty poor because the wickets have been really challenging. And then this year they've had a directive to make the wickets better, and the numbers are much better. So, and a lot of the grade wickets are not great. So, guys are having to hone their craft on tricky-ish, like not that they're doing heaps, but they might be poppy or they might be a bit slow or whatever. They're just not easy to bat. So yeah, and generally it's a pretty thorough process from going from grade cricket to Shield cricket. It's a lot of second 11 cricket. Joel's been in the WACA Academy where he's facing the sidearms on the WACA wickets. He's getting coached by some of the WACA coaches. It's not ever like, okay, he's got 300s, let's pick him. He's played 2 seasons or 2.5 seasons of second 11 cricket. He's got a second 1100 last season. He's in at the WACA doing a lot of training with them. He's hitting with me a lot. Like, they are just constantly like evaluating him, whether he's ready. Is he ready? Is he okay? We think he's ready. We pick him. They don't just sort of pluck someone and say, have a go. You sort of got to get into the system, and then you've got to sort of work through the system to get your opportunity.
Now that tells me straight off the difference that we've been talking about all year there, Hugh, in terms of, we know we could name you a dozen top Premier League cricketers here in the UK who've been given a go by first-class counties in the last year, in the twos. But when I say they're given a go, they might get 1, 2, 3 games, and then they're off. The difference there from what you just said is Joel has not just been into the WACA, but he's been coached by them. He's been playing twos. It's a consistency all the time. So he's playing at that level. He's being coached at that level. He's playing on that wicket at that level. It's all, everything's about consistency rather than let's see how he gets on after 3 tons, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. And he's had to fight. Joel, as an example, has had to fight for all his opportunities. He played, like, he was doing well in grade cricket. He went to England, and the WACA started to take notice of him after his huge season for Crouch End in 2022, I think it was, when he got 1,280 runs or 1,240 runs in the league, broke the Middlesex League record, and we were sharing a lot of content, and people started to notice him on the back of that. Then he came back to Perth. He got his first grade 100 in the first or second round that season, and he then played second 11 after that. There weren't a lot of keepers around, and so then the WACA was sort of like, yeah, we see value in this guy, we're going to invest in him. But he wasn't being paid. It was all him putting in time and effort with the WACA supporting. And even last year when Josh Philippi left Western Australia to go to New South Wales, there was an opportunity for the keeping spot, and Joel was the next one in. He'd had a good season last year. He'd scored 1,000 runs in grade cricket, and most people were expecting him to get the contract, but he didn't, and they brought over a guy from New South Wales. And so Joel had to, again, when he thought he might get his opportunity to become a professional, get some income around it and have some security in cricket, it didn't happen. He had to then continue to work and plug away and train at 6 a.m. 3 days a week while then going to do his personal training and other things. And then finally this year, he's just banged the door down with runs that they've given him an opportunity, and he's now been upgraded to a full contract because he's played enough games. But you're right. Like, I think England is pretty brutal, having been over there. It's pretty brutal in, like, we'll give you a game, but often their games like a bit token because the county's budgets are limited. And no matter how, like, often, Joel's a good example. Joel played for Middlesex, got runs, and they said, no, thanks. And then he went to Worcester, got runs, and they were like, oh, yeah, maybe come back next year. But I think both had budget issues. And if they had a bigger budget, they might say, yeah, you're a good player, we want to sign you. But they obviously had other pros they were paying, and they couldn't just sort of sign them. But I think, yeah, often they've got their contracted players, and then they say, oh, let's get this guy to sort of, we need to not be flogged next week. Let's get a decent Premier League cricketer to trial, but they're never going to do anything with them. Whereas maybe there's an opportunity, or what should happen maybe is when they delist players in September, that they're not contracting people straight away, and they let people have the winter training with them, and they then give people a month in April or 2 months in April and May, and then they go, right, who's the best of these 5 players? Let's sign 1 and 2 out of the 5 because we've seen them for 8 months now. We know they're the right character. We know they've got the right work ethic. They can handle the pressure, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, look, I don't want to be critical of any system. It is what it is. But
you can be.
Yeah, and
I think you're qualified
it's
to critique.
constructive criticism, though, isn't it? It's seeing why something works. What we can clearly hear here, Hugh, is there is, whilst it might not be a direct link, there is a almost unprescripted link between WACA and the first grade cricket by the sound of things, and they know that it's going to work that way. Whereas our 32 leagues don't have that with the 18 first-class counties.
Sorry.
Yeah, oh look, there's a direct link. It's like the Wacker say, you're all playing Premier Cricket this week. Unless you're injured, you're going back to play Premier Cricket. Like they value Premier Cricket highly. That is the next. They play one second 11 game a month, so and because it costs so much to sort of fly interstate, stay in hotels and whatever. There's only one match, one 4-day match per month, no white ball cricket. And so if you're not in the 11 players, like Teague at the moment's not in the WA team, he's not in the Big Bash, he's playing all his cricket in Premier Cricket, and that's all he can be judged on. So there's a huge link. And like you say, it's very different in England where Lancashire have however many different leagues going on, and they all compete with each other rather than potentially feeding into the greater good of Lancashire cricket. And correct me if I'm wrong there, but yeah, I did think when I first came over to England and spent time in the Middlesex League, there was a huge disconnect. There was Middlesex players going and playing for Surrey clubs. It was sort of like, it certainly is not the same connection between the Premier, and it's not the same mindset. Here in Australia, it's like Premier cricket is valued. As I said before, people want to go back and play with their mates, whereas it seems in the UK, it's people are trying to avoid it as much as possible.
For me, it's the word is trust. The state, obviously, it's interlinked, but the trust is there with the first grade. All the states trust the value in first grade, but they don't trust the Premier League, and that may be, it's something that should evolve or has de-evolved over time. I mean, the big one for me through the summer was, we spoke to Jordan Silk on the pod in June time, and there was a lot of people short of players in the T20 Blast, and he was very keen to play in the T20 Blast or in any form of cricket. And I think, did somebody have a quiet word with him once through the whole summer? You got one, the absolute, legend of the Big Bash, top draw state cricketer. And, somebody said, well, maybe, but that was it. And it was baffling, absolutely baffling. And I think the counties didn't even know he was there.
Yeah, look, you ask someone in county land and they probably think we've got enough going on. There's not enough budget to sort of cover everything, but there needs to be a better way to, if you want to be a longevity as in success, like a successful county, I think you should be like saying, right, how do we grow from the bottom up and how do we make our league stronger and have a great Premier League cricket competition so that our players can play better cricket more often? Because to me, that's how you get better. You play a good level of cricket.
There is some minor changes starting to happen here in the UK that I think will help that, but it takes time. So, for example, in Yorkshire, the 4 Premier Leagues that there are, cricket in Yorkshire is massive, obviously. The 4 Premier Leagues, the director of recreational cricket, Paul Cummins, has been involved in that, and they're all linked together. They have a trophy at the end of the season, which is great. If you look in Surrey, as of next season, there is only one organisation running out of Surrey headquarters itself, looking after the Premier League and the leagues below, rather than having these little leagues here, there and everywhere. And I think those changes are starting to happen, but they're just so many years beyond and history. And I'm gonna be critical of one or two areas here where Bumble was when he was on. There's so many people have got their own little empires in their little league around the country. Well, actually, people don't want to let go sometimes. But for the better of the good of the future, there's got to be a change, because 32 Premier Leagues has got to be far too many to support 18 first-class counties, hasn't it?
And look, and I think people want to be relevant, people want to be special, people want to be involved. So if they're important in their league, why would they want to let go of that? But that's a sort of an ego, self-important sort of mindset, I guess, rather than going, hang on a minute, look, Lancashire Cricket are taking this over and they're in charge and they're going to put it all under one thing and it's going to be better for... Okay, great. But look, it's obviously takes someone who's looking at the whole big picture, because I think a lot of people in those roles just look at their own backyard. Okay, I'm the second team coach, great, I'm in charge of the second team. I'm the director of cricket, I'm in charge of the contracted players. But who's then looking at the broader landscape? So it takes someone who's thinking about the whole big picture. And then it takes people to let go and sort of say, yeah, look, this is not about me. This is about the players, and this is about the system and the country, and trying to be the best we can be as a collective.
Definitely. It's been great talking about the Western Australia system and what's happening there. And, I'm sure we'll touch on it in future episodes when we're chatting with you, Scolls. But I think one of the things I'd like to ask now, just to sort of finish this little episode, amongst all of that system right now, just give the listeners a name or two names or three names of players that they will not know, who are down at possibly grade cricket level right now, and they're coming through that Western Australia system, and we want to be able to wait and see. Go on, Hugh.
And are they available for the summer, and are they cheap? Yeah.
Yeah, we our friends at Cricket would be quite happy to take them on board, we think.
Yeah.
Well, one of my boys, Doki Hugenbosom, is a very, very good young player, 20 years old, same age as Teague, but he's not contracted yet. He's played 2 second 11 games. He got 2 40s opening the batting last year against the team that had Riley Meredith. And then this year he got 66 and 75 not out against New South Wales. And he's 20 years old. I think he's going to be a very good player. So he's one that was on WA's radar. There's a few other states sort of interested in him or showing interest in him. So I think he'll hopefully get a rookie contract and maybe get into the system and play a few games. One that people might know because he was added to the Australian squad for the ODIs in England this year was Marley Beardman, 19 years old, fast bowler, enormous ability. He's been injured a lot. He hasn't played much cricket, to be honest. He's played one domestic game or a few domestic games. He's probably played the same amount of grade cricket games in the last 3 or 4 years. But there's a reason he got fast tracked to the Australian squad. So he'll be one that, if he can stay fit and stay on the park, he could be anything. He's the sort of guy that could be a generational player if he can stay fit. Yeah, look, they're two that come to mind initially.
And have you recommended that both of them come and play in England?
Well, Doki, the interesting thing is they can't because of the visa rules. They can't.
Frustrating.
Neither of them can come until. So Doki's played second 11. He has to wait 4 years from the last second 11 game. And until they play 5 red ball games or 20 white ball games for their state and can get the professional visa, they can't come. So you guys need to sort out the rules, and I'll send them over.
It's embarrassing. Yeah, it's embarrassing that rule. It's just stupid.
That rule is baffling, and I've got a lot of good young guys who have played Australian under-19s or have played second 11, and they just can't come. So they either go to Darwin or they sit in Australia and do the winter, whereas we're welcoming anyone and everyone to come over here. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
And that's the perfect way to end this episode, talking about the Western Australia system. And let's be honest, looking at what we could do better in our systems over here. Our friends from Cricket will be agreeing with every word you've just said there, Scolls.
Well, we need everybody to write to their local MP with the facts. We can probably provide the facts and say what the hell's going on, because I suspect it's something that has been a bit overlooked. And when somebody with a bit of common sense has a look at it, they might go, oh yeah, that makes sense, and it'll just change.
Do you have any idea why they have brought that rule in? Like, what value does that add?
It's I suspect it's a rule that's just got caught up from some other rule and has been applied to cricket, but no one's really sort of thought it through properly. So we need a cricket exemption.
Yeah,
absolutely. And on that note, thanks for talking about the system, Scolls, and we're going to keep a close eye on what happens in Western Australia. And
Western Australia.
Yeah, that's the one.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks for joining us at the Premier League Cricket Club. We'll be back soon with more from the world of Premier League and NCCA cricket. But in the meantime, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review and follow us wherever you get your socials. Or maybe check out our website, premierleaguecricket.co.uk, to stay updated. Until next time, have a good one.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Taxes was taxing. Now taxes is relaxing when you file for free.
I can file for free? TurboTax Free Edition. Roughly 37% of filers qualify. Simple Form 1040 returns only. See if you qualify at turbotax.com/free. I can file for free.
Now this is taxes. File for free with TurboTax Free Edition and get your maximum refund. No schedules except for earned income tax credit, child tax credit, and student loan interest. See if you qualify at turbotax.com/free.